to UACNJ, United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. It looks like we have a packed audience tonight. We are on location at our Jenny Jump facility in Hope, New Jersey. For our live audience, just so you know, our screen behind me is where we have the PowerPoint. So if you can't see the screen, you might want to scoot in towards the woods just a little bit so you can get a better view. All right. So a couple things before we get underway. Yeah, unfortunately it peaks out if we get too close. Thank you for coming. Do check. We are live streaming this on our YouTube. So if you ever can't make it up, or for example, get my tongue wrapped around my eye tooth. All right, now that I can speak again. If you ever want to check out our programs and can't quite make it, or we're on the waiting list and weren't quite released, you can always check us out on our live stream on our YouTube page. All the links are on our website, uacnj.org. So that is where you'll get a ton of information on our club, what we do, our member clubs, because we are actually a club made up of clubs, and a list of all our programs that we've offered this public season. And hopefully coming soon, we'll also have a list up for our winter program that we now do only online. So on that note, we also have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a Discord server for all the younger people who want to ask questions about any astrophotography, equipment related. Again, all those links are available on our website. Now, for notes for the people who are here. If you need to use the bathroom, you have the porta potty that's lit by that red light to my right or your left. After the presentation, I will be behind the sales desk, little gift shop, over in the door to my left, your right. We are non-profit, so all the donations you do, whether online or in person, do actually go to help upkeep, maintenance of all our grounds and telescope, keeping our lights on, and allows us to keep offering our public programs for free. That's right, everything is for free, and we have been kept open throughout this pandemic because you guys have been so generous. Right, a couple other safety notes. When you're going to be wandering around, and since it's now getting into fall, it is dark. So if you need to wander around with flashlight, please do keep it pointed towards the ground. We don't like suddenly getting blinded with lights. That being said, when you do go to leave in your car, please do use your headlights. No one likes getting run over. I did it once, would not suggest doing it ever again. So we want to be safe, make sure we are still using our headlights. We understand you can't change the direction of them. That would be kind of a neat feature. I'm sure someone somewhere is going to figure that one out. But until then, we're just going to deal with that. Right. Another thing. If you ever are here and whatnot, we are actually located in state park property. So if you like camping or whatnot, and you manage to get one of our reserve spots, you can always hop over to the Jenny Jump State Park website and check out them and see if they have campsites available, because often during the weekends is a great thing to do, and when night rolls around on Saturday, we're generally open. So, with that, we are going to get into tonight's presentation. Assuming I can get... Oh no, the battery died? So that's less than ideal. No, I had a intro for my speaker and it ran away. I'll just switch devices. So, tonight's presentation is what it takes to set foot on Mars with Krishnadas.
Yep, Kotalit.
Thank you. I'm like, I know I'm going to butcher it if I say it because that's the type of night I've been having with my words. All right. From early childhood, Chris has been amazed by the universe. Everything about it excites him. I can't read that word. Enigmatic expansion of large-scale universe to the chaotic motions of tiny asteroids. The barren beauty of the rocky moon and Mars to the eddy and hurricane-filled gas giants. To the frozen worlds of Pluto and beyond. He is also fascinated by how astronomy has shaped the customs and practices of cultures and societies from the earliest days to the present day now. Last but not least, he asks the same big questions that most of us ask. Where did all this come from? And is there life out there? And with that, tonight's speaker, Krishnadas.
Thank you for a glowing presentation and introduction. Good evening, everyone. I guess I'm more than audible. Is it too loud? Is there a way to change that? You're fine. Fine? Awesome. Okay. Setting foot on Mars, and what does it take to get someone up there? So first question, there are many youngsters in the audience. So let me ask one of those youngsters if anyone can answer. Who was the first person to land on moon? Anyone? Great. Awesome. Who was the first person to land on Mars? Yeah, we have had rovers on Mars for nearly 20 years, but not a single person has set foot on it yet. But that might change in the next 15 to 20 years. It's not a very easy task. We're going to look at what makes it a hard task and a very interesting challenge for humanity. Okay? Because before we solve a problem, we need to understand the problem, what it is, right? Mars has been around dream for more than about 120, 140 years. I heard that when War of the World was broadcast on radio in the 1930s, where Martians, came to Earth and started attacking and all that, people thought it was real and they were panicking and running helter-skelter. So there was so much of the imagination about life on Mars, and Mars always involved us. But it has been such a hard target. There were recent talks about sending a one-way trip to Mars and things like that. But none of that has materialized. Now NASA has a mandate to send someone to Mars in the mid-2030s or so, and they're working hard at it. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the challenges that NASA has to solve to put someone on Mars or around Mars. Okay. Anyone recognizes this gentleman? Yes, great job. Yes. He is known as the father of modern rocket propulsion or rocket science, Robert Browder. Yes. A good part of sending someone to Mars is the journey itself and the rocket science involved, right? So let's start there. Okay. That's a big problem. So like all analytical people, good scientists, we will break it down to 3 steps. First step is to get someone to low Earth orbit, understand what that entails. In the next step, we will see what it takes to send someone to the moon. And the last step will be the journey to Mars itself. Okay, make sense? Yeah? Low Earth orbit. So we have a lot of stuff in low Earth orbit, a lot of satellites that go around the Earth every hour and a half or something like that. International Space Station is one of them, Hubble Space Telescope, and there are many others. Okay. So let's try to take a closer look at where is the ISS or low Earth orbit and what it takes to get there. Okay. Many people have the notion that the ISS is like far out halfway to the Mars or something like that. That's not really true. Here is a scale. Okay. If Earth has 8,000 miles of diameter, that's the size of Earth. The ISS is just 250 miles from Earth's surface. That is like the distance of, how far is Washington, D.C. from here? 250 miles. You could get there in 5 hours in one single tank of gas, right? But ISS is a different story. To get there, you have to work against Earth's gravity, and get into orbit is a real challenge, right? Actually, there was a gentleman who explained to us what it takes to put something in orbit. This is a challenge question. I don't know if anyone will recognize this picture. This is the first ever explanation of putting something in orbit. Anyone recognizes this picture and who this gentleman is? Yes. Someone gave an answer. That could be right. Not Da Vinci. No, but very close. It's the one who came after Galileo. No, Copernicus was before. But great attempt. That was Isaac Newton. So Newton's book Principia, which was a landmark book, he explained what it means to put something in orbit. So he used these pictures, right? He asked us to imagine like a cannon on top of a mountain. And if you fire the cannon, maybe it will fall, the cannonball will fall here. If you put some more oomph in it, it might reach farther. As you increase the power of the cannon, by the time it hits the ground, it would reach halfway around the Earth. And if you actually put enough power, it will never touch Earth, but will go in orbit. That's what you explained. And this is actually true. That's how we explain orbit. And the speed that you need to get off Earth and go into orbit is 20,000 miles per hour. Now, you might have heard that the International Space Station is going around. Can anyone guess what's the speed of the ISS? Exactly, 17,000 miles per hour. You need more than that to get into orbit, because you have to escape from Earth's, the aerodynamic drag and some gravity and all that. So you need 20,000 miles to get into low Earth orbit. Okay. Anyone in school here, grade school? This looks a bit weird, right? 99 out of 100. What makes it weird? You got an F. Well, that would be a very weird day in school, but in real life, especially in rocket science, this is true. Because Mother Nature is a harsh grader. Why? If you want to put something in low Earth orbit, and you are hitting, say, instead of 20,000, you are hitting 19,000 miles. What happens? If you are launching from, Kennedy Space Center, you will probably fall somewhere in the Atlantic or somewhere over Africa. Your mission fails. If there are people in them, there are funerals. You need to go before the Congress and have some explaining to do. Right? So when we want to hit 20,000 miles, we need to hit that 20,000 miles, period. 99% of it doesn't cut it, because Mother Nature is a harsh grader. But we have always seen these things, right? Does anyone recognize this? Space travel? It's my favorite, USS Enterprise, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have that in real life. That only exists on the TV screen in Hollywood, right? In real life, what do we have? Here is an example of what we have. Does anyone recognize this one? What is it? Yes. It is a spaceship. What specific spaceship? Good answer. Yes. Exactly. That's a space shuttle. Good point. So here's a space shuttle, and the plane is the actual shuttle. And you have these two cylindrical things and the big bullet-shaped brown cylinder, right? All of them look about the same size, isn't it? So this is actually the launch of the space shuttle that is flying. Now, regardless of the size, let's just ignore the size. These white cylinders are solid rocket boosters, right? And this brown cylinder is the liquid propellant. They are all packed with propellants, densely packed. Okay. These SRBs, they're the rocket boosters, each of them is 630 tons. And the brown tank is 840 tons. And this plane, the actual shuttle, is 100 tons. So let's do the math. 630 tons each. That is about 1260 tons. And then 840. So that makes it about, what, 2,000 some pounds? So to carry this 100-ton shuttle, you need more than 2,000 tons of fuel and tanks to launch it, right? These solid rocket boosters, you know, they burn up and they are dumped in the ocean in 2 minutes after launch. And the hydrogen tank, that is dropped after 8 minutes. The only thing that reaches the ISS and comes back is this 100-ton, which means less than 5% of the mass sitting on the launch pad. 95% of it is either burnt or dumped because we can't afford to carry it. Less than 5% is what gets to ISS and comes back, okay? That is the challenge here. Let's look at the engine itself, okay? This is the RS-25 engine, the heart and soul of the space shuttle. Scientists say, or the engineers say, or both of them say, this is the most powerful rocket engine, the chemical propulsion engine we have. And they even go and say that this is the best engine we can ever have. So this is a challenge for some of you younger folks. When you grow up, you have to prove them wrong. If they are saying this is the best engine that can ever be, it's up to you guys to prove them wrong, okay? But let's take a look at why they are saying this is the most powerful engine and this is the most powerful engine that can ever be, okay? What actually determines the power of an engine is something called a specific impulse. It is the speed at which your fuel can propel, or the speed at which your fuel can propel the rocket. It is determined by two things: the velocity of the gas that is coming out of the nozzle, which is determined by the heat of combustion and the speed of and the how light the molecules are, or the gases coming out. So the faster you want the exhaust gases to go faster out of the nozzle, you want them to burn at a very high temperature, and you want the fuel that is the lightest fuel. And the lightest fuel that we know from the periodic table is hydrogen. This engine is using liquid hydrogen. So we don't know of any other fuel that's lighter, right? Now we should try and burn hotter. We are using the most high temperature alloys in the periodic table to build this engine body. Moreover, we are running liquid hydrogen at negative 420 degrees through about 1,000 channels around this to keep it cool. Because if we don't keep it cool using that liquid hydrogen, in the 6,000 degrees heat, this nozzle will go up like a puff. So we are running at the maximum possible. We are using the highest temperature alloys possible. We are burning it we are burning liquid hydrogen at the highest temperature possible. And liquid hydrogen is the lightest fuel that we have. So that's the reason we are saying this is the most powerful engine that can ever be. So some of you young guys might want to take note and think in some different directions if you want a better than that. Okay. So this is what we have, and this is the same engine that we are going to use, NASA is going to use in the Space Launch System, SLS system, that will take us to Mars and beyond. Okay. Feel free to make any comments or questions, please. I forgot to say that before. Sorry, will you say that again?
Lots of extra exhaust comes out of this engine, and that's where the area of improvement that.
So this engine itself, by design, there hasn't been much of improvement deemed possible. This is the best engine. This is the best engine because it is using the lightest element and it is burning at the highest temperature. And we are using the most heat-tolerant metal alloys that is known to man. Yeah. The burning itself, it is not inefficient. Yes, please.
SpaceX Falcon.
Yeah.
Is a similar engine or different?
They use a different engine. They use it. It is less powerful, but it has other advantages. It is using a highly purified form of kerosene as propellant. It is much easier to handle and much cheaper, but it is not more powerful than this is more powerful than the SpaceX Falcon engine.
Hey,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yes.
Just to let you know, we will have a question and answer session at the end where I then go out into the audience and so they can use the mic so our audience at home can hear the question.
Oh, okay.
So most of the questions we should leave till after the presentation.
All right. So please hold your questions. Okay. Yeah. So this is going to be a little less interactive, but hope you guys can hold till then. All right. So with all those limitations, we reached the moon more than 50 years ago. Right? This is a shot of Earth from the surface of moon. Let's take a look at what it took to put a man on the moon. That's our stage 2, right? First, let's try to understand the scale. So we have Earth, again, for perspective, 8,000 miles in size. Let's just step back and get moon. All right, so here is the Earth, the blue circle, and this dot is the moon. And the distance is about 240,000 miles. So if ISS is about 250 miles, moon is roughly 1,000 times as far away from Earth. Okay. But distance is not the problem here. The challenge is speed. Let's take a look at what I mean by that. We already saw that to get something off the surface of Earth and put it in low Earth orbit, we need 20,000 miles speed. If it is 1 pound or 1,000 pounds, that mass has to reach. We have to spend that much energy to put it in low Earth orbit. Okay. The path to moon is actually the first stage is low Earth orbit, typically. But there are other ways of getting it, but let's take it as an example. So first we need to get 20,000 miles speed. Next, we need to go on our way to moon, which takes another engine burn. That's about 8,200 miles per hour. Okay. That will send us on our way to moon. Once we reach the moon, we need to get into orbit, so we have to reduce our speed. How do we reduce our speed? burn the other way, yes. But again, that is speed, 2,400 miles. But by the way, I want to actually go back and say, this 20,000 miles, if we don't hit it, we know what happens, right? Yeah, bad things happen. This 8,200 miles, if we don't hit it, we don't go to the moon, but we go on a very large orbit around the Earth. And your mission fails, right? Not a good way to end a mission. If we don't actually hit that 2,400 miles, we are going to overshoot. Right? Now, let's say successfully we've achieved that and we are in orbit around the moon. Next, we have to break our forward speed and start our descent. That would be another 3,900 miles. If we don't achieve that, our astronauts will keep going around the moon. Again, mission failure, right? And the last stage is a soft landing. That takes about 700 miles an hour. That's the velocity change needed. Now, this is a piece of training equipment. It's a training equipment that was used by Neil Armstrong. There were two of these. One of them, when Armstrong was training, it crashed, and Armstrong got out without getting injured. But if it happens on the moon, your remains will stay on the moon, right? It's a hard landing, right? All right, so now that we have landed, we plant our flag, thank our sponsors and everything, right? It doesn't cost anything. No propellant is required. Return journey, again, it's the same reversal. You need 700 miles per hour to just get off the surface of moon. 1,900 miles to get into orbit. Another 2,400 miles to be on our way to Earth. And once we reach Earth, we don't need to spend any propellant, because we already know that Earth has a very thick atmosphere. We can use that to break our speed. All you need is a very strong heat shield in front. So what happens is that you will burn like a meteor. This is actually one of the lunar modules returning from the moon. You are burning at about 3,000. You're coming at about 35,000 miles speed, and the front of your module is something like 18,000 degrees or something like that. Very hot. But it doesn't cost any propellant because the air is going to slow you down. Okay. And finally, you splash down. Again, it doesn't cost anything. But the total energy required here, or the speed that you need to spend here, is about 42,000 miles per hour. That is our expenses. Okay. Now let's take a look at how we got there. Here's a gigantic rocket, Saturn V, 365 feet tall. This is the capsule that housed our astronauts, intrepid explorers, and brought them back. It's right at the tip. Here are 3 intrepid explorers for a 1-week trip. They need supplies of oxygen, 33 cylinders, equivalent 4 of these 5-gallon cans of water, and their food stuff. They loaded all that. It was about 6 tons. Okay. And the stuff that was sitting on the launch pad, 3,200 tons. That was the weight of the stuff on the launch pad to get 6 tons back and forth. So that is about what, 99.8% of the weight is either propellant that is burnt up or tank that is dumped. Less than 0.2% of the mass comes back. when we send somebody to moon. Not an easy task, is it? All right. We still went to moon. We are going back, but this is the challenge that we have. Okay. Let's see what it takes to go to Mars now. So here's a picture of the next generation space launch system, but we'll come to that a little later. SLS is not a challenge for us, it's a solution. Again, we will be using the latest and the most powerful rocket that is ever built, SLS. To get off the surface of Earth, we need 20,000 miles. We all know that by now, right? And to be on our way to Mars, we need another 9,000 miles for the interplanetary trajectory. Okay. And once we reach Mars, there are ways we can actually, Mars has some atmosphere, so we can use Martian atmosphere to slow us down. So you don't have to brake your speed by burning your engine reverse. So we can use aero braking there, so to speak. But we cannot use, for landing we cannot use parachute because the atmosphere is very thin. But we have been landing stuff on Mars, but we need something like this. We need rocket power to land. That takes about 2,000 miles. Once we land, again we can plant our flag, go about our business. But we need to return, right? So we need a rocket there, we need a launch pad there, and we need 17,000 miles per hour to get off Mars and be on our way back to Earth. Once we get to Earth, we can again use Earth's atmosphere because we are coming down a little faster because now we are falling all the way from Mars, not from Moon, so your speed is higher, but we can still use the atmosphere safely with enough heat shield, and then we can land without any propellant. So that's about 48,000 miles per hour. So I did the math for you guys, okay? Now to Moon and back is 42,000 miles velocity needed. As to Mars and back, it's only 15% more, right? It doesn't look like a big deal, isn't it? Well, I haven't been there because speed is not the issue there. The issue is distance. That is the biggest challenge when we want to go to Mars. Let's see what we mean by that, okay? Again, let's go back to getting a distance perspective. Earth to Moon is about 250,000 miles. Let's step back. All right, that's the diameter of Moon's orbit is 500,000 miles, approximately. We are stepping back just to get, all right, so the blue line is Earth's orbit, and on somewhere on the left is the Sun, and this is now Venus's orbit. Okay. Let's take them back again. Okay, now we have Mercury's orbit and the Sun. All right, so now the red circle is Mars's orbit. So we have some idea about where we are, okay? So the blue circle, which is Earth's orbit, this point is Sun, and its Earth-Sun distance is about 93 million miles, whereas Mars to Sun distance is 140 million miles, okay? And Earth takes about 12 months to go around the Sun, and Mars takes about 22.5 months. Because it is farther from the Sun, it takes longer. All right, so at some point, Earth, the blue dot, and Mars, they will get very close, correct? So can we just jump across? No. Let's see what it takes anyway, just for fun's sake. The answer is no, but why no? It takes 250,000 miles velocity change. That's not something we have. Why 250,000 miles? To jump straight across, you need to break Earth's orbital velocity. Remember, your spacecraft on Earth is moving at the same speed as Earth around the sun, which is about 67,000 miles an hour. So you have to break that speed, then work against sun's gravity. Once you reach Mars, you have to gain Mars's speed. That's about 55,000 miles. And then you need to come back, reverse all that. So that's about 250,000 miles. That doesn't exist for us, except for these folks. Right? Captain Kirk, we don't have them, unfortunately. All right, what we have in real life, I wanted to actually show this picture, not so much as to impress the young folks, but this name, Walter Hohmann. In 1925, before we launched anything into space, rocket science was at its nascency. This German engineer, he actually worked out how to get from one planet to another in the most economical way. Can you imagine? No one has ever launched any rocket at that time. Goddard was working on its propulsion. He worked out, and we still use this method. It's called Hohmann transfer, to move from one planet to another. Yeah, so here it is. Just imagine, so for all the young folks, if you have a great idea, just work on it. Don't worry about practical application at that time. Future will catch up with you. Okay? So here's how it works. So we have the Earth's orbit in blue, Mars orbit in red, right? Oh, sorry. So the way that works is the white orbit is the Hohmann transfer. So what you do is from Earth's orbit, you go on an ellipse to jump to Mars orbit. And you can come back the same way. It works the same way, even reverse, if you are careful. So you actually give a boost to your spacecraft here so that it goes farther out and then comes back. So this is the full ellipse, but all you need is the first part of it. And we are still using this transfer orbit in most of our missions. Okay? It takes about 17 months for the whole, but it's about 8.5 on an average to get to Mars. Now let's just simulate it, okay? Just for fun. Oh, by the way, there are no boomerang flights. When you go to Moon and things are not going your way, you can come back. When you go to Mars, you are committed. There is no return path. There is no feasible return path for you. So you are committed. There are no boomerang flights. Just as a reminder. All right. So let's see this Hohmann transfer, if we can use this, okay? The blue dot is Earth, the white dot is our spacecraft, and the red dot is Mars, okay? Let's see if we can catch the planet just for fun and to get an appreciation for what it means to fly to Mars, okay? All right, so we have everything lined up, and the white dot in the center is the sun. Everything is lined up, so let's just go, right? All right, so we are moving. Spacecraft has left Earth. Watch the white dot and the red dot, okay? Good. Month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, 6, month 7, month 8, month 8.5. So we reached the Mars orbit, but we missed the planet. Planet is far behind us. Okay? That's an embarrassment, right? So we need to be a little more clever about this. We need to make sure that the planet is aligned with us so that the timing is right when we get to that point, right? So let's do this again. But before that, let's see if we can come back, right? So we missed the planet, now we want to come back, okay? All right, so we are now reaching the Earth's orbit, but Earth is nowhere to be found. Yes. So now we are dead. It took 17 months, but yeah. So let's try to be a little more smart about it. So we will actually give Mars a head start so that the planet, which is moving slower, will get here when we get there, okay? That much we can do. All right. Let's try again. Yay. We are heroes now, okay? So we jump on the planet, we do our stuff, plant our house, post some pictures, and then we on our way back, all right? We left Mars. What happened? We missed Earth again. Which means we can't just touch the planet Mars and then hop back onto the spacecraft and be on our way back. We have to be clever and wait for Earth to line up. So that's another lesson we have. So let's do this again. See if we can catch Earth on our return, okay? All right, so we know this part. All right, so we made it. Now we are waiting for Earth to line up for our return journey, okay? All right, so month 12, month 13, 14, 15, 17, 18. Remember, all this time we are spending on Mars. See, the spacecraft is on Mars. 21, 22. Now we got a window after 23 and a half, nearly 2 years after launch. Okay. Safely home. How long did it take? Just to reach Mars and safely come back? 32 months. Right? Okay, for a 32-month journey, what does it take for 32-month journey? So we actually know that we have to spend a bigger crew than our crew to the moon. Psychologists have some kind of analysis and understanding. Like if you send 3 people like Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, it's not going to work because the 2 will gang up against 1, and they won't get along well. 4 apparently is not a good idea either because they will split into groups of 2, and these 2 groups, they won't get along well. 4 and 5, nobody has any consensus. They don't have any idea whether they can get along well without compromising mission goals. But 6 people, there is a consensus. Yeah, 6 people, there is enough people there for everybody to, get along well without compromising mission goals. And this group of 6 people, this picture is from Mars 500, a European Space Agency experiment, where they put these 6 fellows inside a warehouse in a habitat to simulate living in a secluded environment like Mars or somewhere. They did an experiment for 1 year. I think it was, the idea was to keep them inside for 1 whole year without opening the hatch, but they had to open it once or something for some reason. So it's not an easy task. On Earth, yeah, they could open the hatch and do whatever they needed. But if you're out in Mars, that's not feasible, right? So anyway, for a crew of 6, you need about 9,150 cylinders equivalent of oxygen, about 1,200 these gallons of water, and then 280 carts full of food. And by the way, these bananas, you might want to eat them pretty early in the beginning. Okay. You don't want to leave them for 37 months. Okay. Okay, that's about 420 tons. What is 420 tons? The International Space Station. That is the mass that we need to send to Mars at the same rate as we use for Moon. Is it feasible? Let's see. How did we get 420 tons into space? Being used just for transporting the material, not including people, not including, any other kind of missions. Used 27 of these shuttle launches. Recall that ISS was not assembled and launched in one piece. It was assembled in space, piece by piece, right? 27 of shuttle launches, 2 of these Proton rockets and 2 of these smaller Soyuz rockets. So many launches it took just material. And then additional launches to take people so that they can assemble them. Okay? So obviously this is going to be multiple launches, and you need to assemble the whole thing, put them together in space. That's what. But 420 tons is too much, and scientists think there are ways that we can reduce that mass somewhat. So we can use ideas about recycling. Today they use recycling a lot in International Space Station. For example, they recycle urine into water. Does anyone know that? Yeah, actually an astronaut put it in a very nice way. They said, we turn yesterday's coffee into tomorrow's coffee. Yeah. And yeah, you can break down carbon dioxide into oxygen, and you can do such stuff. So you don't have to take everything up, but there are ways to reduce some of them. The other is like equipment breakdown. There are tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of parts involved, and things break down. Invariably they break down. If you put together a lot of components together, reliability is a big challenge. Things always break down. If some of you may recall, the last few flights of the space shuttle were just loading spare parts into ISS so that they don't run out until the next launch takes place, right? But there are some promising developments here. The new technology is called additive manufacturing, 3D printing essentially. They have been experimented on ISS. So here are a couple of parts they did on ISS. Here's an astronaut who made a wrench using 3D printer. So the design was actually transmitted from Earth, and then it was printed. So ideas like this can be used, so you don't have to carry everything. But this is a good way to think about how to, reduce the mass that you need to carry. So with all these ideas, people think about 100 tons perhaps we could do as a benchmark, right? 100 tons of mass to Mars. So let's see what it takes to launch 100 tons to Mars. So 6 tons, this is a moon picture. For 6 tons, the mass sitting on the launch pad was 3,200 tons, right? So 100 tons, it takes about 85,000 tons to launch to Mars. What weighs 85,000 tons? An aircraft carrier. These things don't fly. I know that we have all seen the movie Avengers, and it flies like this, right? But it doesn't really fly. We have never put anything like this in orbit or launched anything like this. Okay. So this is going to be another. Yeah, here is just for scale. 39 of these launches. Again, split up. 25 of the Saturn rockets. Yeah. So there are some ideas. We have to split up and assemble stuff in space. So the most powerful rocket that we have is SLS, just recently developed, and it can carry bigger parts. So you can reduce the number of assemblies you need to do in space. So this is one of the ideas. Sorry. Oh. SLS, then pre-deploy. Certain things you can send in advance, either to Mars or stuff that you don't need on Mars, you need on your return journey. You can leave them in Martian orbit or somewhere around strategically. So you don't have to haul everything to Mars, then bring them back. So there are ideas like this. Another is, sorry about that. Yeah, nuclear if we have access to nuclear propulsion, that will change the game. We don't have that. We have done some experiments in the 1970s, but it's not a feasible option at this point for various reasons. Here is another promising technology, ISRU, in situ resource optimization, resource utilization. Here is Perseverance robot rover on Mars, the latest one. It has a module called MOXIE. What MOXIE does is it breathes in, so to speak, carbon dioxide on Mars and exhales oxygen. What it does is it takes carbon dioxide and it extracts oxygen from it. It's an experiment. It is a small experiment, but it's very promising, because if we don't have to carry all that oxygen from Earth, Mars already has enough carbon dioxide, we can eliminate a lot of mass. So this is a very promising idea. So ideas like this, what NASA is working on, except nuclear. Okay, I think we have spoken enough about rocket propulsion and the mass required and all that. There is one other element that we haven't spoken about. Anyone wants to take a guess? Money is at the end. Money doesn't solve all problems, but yes, money is required. We are not going to talk about money here, but it's a good point. Yeah. Health, yes. Human health. Because what makes a human spaceflight to Mars interesting is that there are humans in it, right? So let's take a look at what are the health hazards and risks. Here is one type of hazard. Out in space, there is radiation. Sun emits radiation, harmful radiation. Deep space objects, supernova explosions and other sources, they emit, powerful cosmic rays. Here on Earth, we are shielded by our atmosphere and the magnetic field of the Earth, which block radiation or deflect them, right? In ISS, we are above our atmosphere, so we don't get that much protection, but we still have the magnetic field, which will deflect a lot of radiation. But out on our way to Mars, we don't have all that. So that is a huge risk. What is the best protection against radiation? Lead, mass basically. And lead is the best protection money can buy. But it is mass. Mass is something we cannot afford to take. We cannot afford to launch. Right? Every ounce of mass requires propellant. That propellant is mass. To carry the propellant, there is more propellant required. And to carry that additional propellant, there is even more. So you say it's not linear. It is exponential, like compound interest. Right? So mass is something that we cannot afford to take. So water is a decent protection. So we have to carry a lot of water. So perhaps, if the sun is having a bad day, we could send a signal to the astronauts so they can kind of take, hide behind the water bottles or stuff like that. It's not a very elegant solution, but probably something along those lines. We don't have a solution for that. Okay. Radiation is a big risk. Another risk is due to weightlessness in outer space or microgravity or whatever. We are never weightless. I mean, there is microgravity, no? Yeah. Or weightless, whatever. So here on Earth, life as we know, and we all evolved in an environment of gravity here on Earth. Our systems are made and they work well in an environment like Earth. Outside, in weightless environment, our bodies don't have to work hard to move, which means our muscles don't work and they atrophy, they decay, they lose strength. This is a challenge, but our experience on International Space Station, several iterations of machines like this, Now we have astronauts on ISS coming back pretty healthy. Those who do exercise regularly, they come back very healthy. They don't lose much muscle mass. Those who don't exercise, they lose muscle mass. So this is the problem that's been solved now. We can say it's solved. Another challenge with weightlessness is that the balance mechanism in our inner ear is used to gravity telling it which way is down. When the body doesn't feel gravity, it gets messed up. And people feel nausea. About 40-50% of the astronauts throw up. Other people feel nausea. A couple of days later, they kind of recover. And the same thing happens when they come back to Earth, because the body needs to get used to the new gravity environment. So when they come back, then they just need to sit around like these guys for a couple of days. And then they kind of recover. But that's an effect. Okay. Here is another challenge from weightlessness. Our bones, in the normal gravity environment, they feel load. When they feel load, they strengthen. When there is no load, they lose strength. And they develop what is called osteoporosis. Right? So on ISS we have, this is astronaut Sunny Williams. There is a bungee cord to simulate load or kind of tension here. So she's working on a treadmill this fashion. So this kind of works, but it is not a full solution in the sense there are still a lot of people who are not fully recovering their bone strength. And it's very important because when we are sending people to Mars, we don't want them landing there with a broken hip or something, right? So this is still a challenge that is not fully solved. Okay, here is another one. In a weightless environment, the fluid pressure in the upper body, especially spine and head, you might see some astronauts' pictures with the face swollen. Because here on Earth, things are pulled down, the fluid pressure is downward. When you remove the gravity, people, they feel like they are hanging upside down. Right? This extra pressure keeps, they develop some eye problems, acute eye problems, which are usually seen in extremely obese people and very rarely seen, if ever, on Earth. But a significant percent of astronauts have developed this. They don't go blind, but they develop extremely nearsight. They become extremely nearsighted. So they call it visual impairment due to intracranial pressure. That's a technical term they use. But this is the big problem there. Okay, so here are some of the solutions that NASA and ESA are working on. It is like it's like a vacuum cleaner. This guy is inside the vacuum cleaner. It's like a reverse vacuum. The vacuum inside this kind of bag pulls fluid from its body downward, so it reduces the pressure in its head and upper body. Here is another piece of equipment that people are working on. This is kind of a treadmill. The lower body is in a vacuum chamber, so that the pressure towards the head reduces. Kind of funny, isn't it? But these are real problems there. Okay, another problem, right? If you put a small number of people in a very confined space for a long period of time, things may not go so well, right? We know this guy. We also know this guy. Even cuckoo, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, but there are psychological issues involved. We know that when people are put under extreme pressure in very challenging conditions and limited space, they things may not work so well. But we also have some optimistic kind of indications, like the turn of the century polar expeditions like Shackleton and others. They have survived, but it is still a challenge. So this is something we have to be very aware of, and people need to be carefully profiled from a psychological point of view. Okay. So for a lot of these things, ISS have been our testbed. So here is an example: the twin study, the Mark Kelly and Scott Kelly, who are genetically identical. One brother spent 1 year in space in ISS, and NASA was studying the genetic variations between the two brothers as one brother stayed on Earth. There have been very short-term changes as well as some are very long-term changes, and I believe some of the changes not come back to normal for Scott. I think I need to check on that. But there are some significant variations because this is a unique opportunity to study what changes occur at the genetic level, because we have genetically identical twins. Right. Here is an astronaut Burbank. This is a VO2 max. Any runners here or aerobic people? So VO2 max. A VO2 max is the capacity to do long duration hard work. Going to space in a couple of weeks' time, they lose about 15 to 20% of their hard work capacity. So this equipment is actually measuring that. So there are a lot of health-related aspects that NASA is studying and measuring and trying to figure out. Okay. So most recently, you may have heard this, NASA is also planning to put a few folks in a simulation, in a simulated Martian habitat here on Earth. They are just recruiting about 4 people in the age group of something like 30 to 55 or something. They're going to put them next year on a 1 year simulation in an isolated habitat. Something similar to what ESA did on the face of it. Yeah. Okay. A few other things on our way to Mars. The Artemis missions, they will go to Moon so that we can develop some of the technologies we need to get to Mars. It will establish a base on Mars where people can stay long duration. The idea is that Moon is much closer than Earth, so within an arm's reach, we can always get there somewhat faster. It's a much better learning environment than Mars. So there are a few missions planned at Artemis. Orion spacecraft is developed. That's the one that will take us to Moon, Mars, and even beyond whenever people are ready. This is the base camp. So these missions will start in 2024 or something like that. So the idea is that the NASA's mandate is to send somebody to Mars, either on the surface or around the mid-2030s or something. So it's definitely something to look forward to, and hopefully in a few years from now, when somebody asks who is the first person to land on Mars, we will have an answer for that. Right. Okay, last, I just want to end this with this quote from Mark Watney. Anyone remembers Mark Watney? This is from the Martian movie, Matt Damon. There is an amazing quote. At some point, everything is going to go south on you, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now, you can either accept that, or you can get to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math. You solve one problem, and you solve the next one, and then the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to go home. All right, that's all, folks, and I think I can take some questions. First credit,
Thank you, Krishna.
Dan Love, you contributed a lot of material.
Right. So we are, like I said, we are going to have a question and answer session. Sorry, I'm just putting out a last call in our online chat. some questions. Before we start into the Q&A session, because I think I saw a couple of you arrive during the middle of the program and didn't quite get a couple of safety briefing things. For the people here, if you need the restroom, again, it is the porta potty to my right, your left. It has the red light on it. After the presentation, when we're done with questions, I'll be manning the sales desk. You can check out our gift shop. It has a whole bunch of fun things, a couple useful things, such as a planisphere for checking out what we have in the night sky. When we are using flashlights, we just ask you to keep them pointed towards the ground because bright lights in our eyes, when we don't need them, is slightly painful. On that note, however, we are still using our headlights on our cars when we leave. We like living and not getting run over. Right. We do have a couple of scope observatories open. Each of the sheds you saw when you came in houses its own telescope. We actually have one of those scopes in the back, the Greenwood. It's in a red-colored shed. Just around the house is also open. There are also a couple of private telescopes set up on the lawn. Thing to note, any United Astronomy Club of New Jersey scope, we do not have the eyepieces in. What we do have is actually a camera set up where the eyepiece would normally go, and the image that you would see through the scope is actually projected onto a screen. Because of that, some private scopes do actually still have eyepieces where you can look through the telescope. We just ask that because the sanitation required for the telescopes between people would actually kill the coatings and whatnot. There's technical details that people far smarter than me went over, and they kind of zoomed over my head, but the sanitation between people required would actually kill those eyepieces. So just be mindful that if you are not feeling well, please do not look through the eyepieces. Again, we have the projected images for you to enjoy. That being said, when you do go up to a telescope and you want to look through it, please ask before doing so, because like I said, some of those telescopes are privately owned and not UACNJ owned. Okay, so with that, let's get into our Q&A session. How this is going to go is I'm going to walk out for your questions in the live audience. I'm going to walk out with this microphone, and so our online audience can hear what the question you are asking actually is, because chances are if you have that question, they also have the same or a similar question. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to start out with actually a question we got from online. All right. And the first question I got from online was, if you had the option to go to Mars, would you take the opportunity?
It depends. It's a lot is on the timing. So the reason I'm saying is that timing and the mode. A few years ago, some of you might recall, there were some organizations promoting a one-way trip to Mars. They were looking for people who are willing to take a very perilous trip to Mars and most certainly die there. That's not a kind of end I'm looking for.
I can't blame you. That's a mood.
No, yeah, a two-way trip. If there is an opportunity with enough safeguards and all that, yeah. But I'm not looking to end my life pointlessly, just for the sake of putting the name somewhere. Good question, though.
So next is a question from our live audience. I just ask that you kind of raise your hand and wave it about because I have trouble seeing in the dark. All right, so.
Thank you. So, I'd like to start off with saying that I'm not a moonland denier. However, do you believe there's any reason why so during the space race, we landed, us, the U.S., landed on the moon. Is there no reason why any other country, USSR or China or anything, has landed on the moon since? I feel like it'd be a very rich place for natural resources, and it's been 50-something years. I feel it would be so easy. with the technology advancement to explore those resources? Thank you.
So I didn't catch all the parts of the
So
question.
basically, I believe the question was, the U.S. landed on the moon,
Right.
and then everyone promptly went, I'm not going to go there.
Mhm.
Why haven't other people decided to go there? Because there are things like natural resources and whatnot.
Yeah, using moon as a minefield. I mean, it's. I'm not certain that it is commercially feasible. Nobody wants to just go there and just pick up just for a trophy, bring something. If we are talking about natural resources, it has to be commercially viable. So I don't think I have seen anything that says it is commercially viable at this point. Now, as regards why no one has gone there, probably it is a hard job. How many countries have even successfully landed there till date? It's not an easy task.
I mean,
Even Saturn missions were extremely risky. Saturn missions took significant risks compared to what we are doing today in SLS and other designs. But it was a mandate, it was a very courageous step. Kennedy said by the turn of the decade, we should put a man on the moon. There was a space race, there was political and other reasons, but it was a scientific success and an engineering success. But for it takes a lot of resources and a lot of scientific power also.
And
So-
robotics have developed quite significantly.
Yes, these days robotics have developed quite significantly. You should look at the Apollo 11 mission report if you'd like to see that. To look at all the details of how it was accomplished. That will be it's available free on NASA website or other places.
all right. So next, we're going to take another online question, and this person asked, "Which is your favorite spacefaring vessel?" They gave an example like the shuttle, Voyager, the Hubble telescope. What's your favorite object that travels through
My
space?
favorite is the Voyager missions. Personal favorite. The twin missions that were launched in the 1970s in a grand tour for multiple reasons. One is that both of them are kind of outside what we call the sun's influence, not gravitationally, but otherwise. Gravity never gets to zero, but it is in interstellar space. It is still talking to us. Twin missions, their power, it is like a Firefly kind of electric power, RTG now. The other reason I love that is someone at JPL, somewhere in the 60s or something, identified a unique opportunity in the sense it occurs only about once in 175 years, and a rare alignment of all the planets where you can actually do gravity assist to hop from one planet to the other and from there to the next. That was an amazing idea, and these missions used that. They didn't miss that opportunity. The reason why they used two identical spacecraft was that they were not sure one is going to work. Two, thinking at least one will work, and both worked, and they are still sending us signals. Amazing. So they are my personal favorite, if I have to pick one.
All right. Next, we have a live up.
Hi, yeah. So I wanted to ask, you had the quote from The Martian. Has NASA looked at building the type of vehicle that we see they use in the book and in the movie The Martian, where you have this sort of, I guess in the book it's an ion drive, but it's a reusable transfer vehicle that goes from Earth to Mars and back for every mission. So you wouldn't need necessarily to do a second mission to Mars. You wouldn't need to launch another 450 tons of supplies or of spacecraft.
Yeah, I haven't read the book. I watched the movie. I love the movie, but there are truly fictional aspects to that movie. And the storm in the beginning. The storm on Mars never gets that strong. To be very frank with you, I don't remember too much about that particular vehicle that you mentioned, but obviously reusable transport technology would be definitely something that will cut down the mass, right? So anything that you can take there and then bring back, that would definitely be something that will cut down the mass. So that is something that they are using, or they are looking to use anyway. Yeah, but there is always trade-off in that. So yeah,
Right.
reusability, recycle, all those ideas are definitely worth exploring.
All right, and this next online question actually bounces wonderfully off of that question. It wasn't SpaceX planning on quote unquote refuel points or restock points so that they don't need to carry everything off the planet at one time? They could possibly take more with them to Mars or back because it doesn't have to go all at once. And that's actually, I believe, correct. They are planning on getting things up and having various like waypoints that
Yeah.
you would hit.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of the ideas. When I talked about pre-deploy, you don't haul everything back and forth all the way, right? You can strategically leave stuff along the way so that things that you need for the return or things that you need later. Pre-deploy means you get something up there, whether it's fuel or return vehicles or other equipment you can launch before, leave wherever you want, either on Mars or on low Earth orbit. So definitely including fuel, right? But that's not a technology that today exists. I don't know how far along SpaceX is on that. I haven't looked at them. But yeah,
They're a little
it is
bit
a
farther
promising.
than other ones.
Sorry,
They're a little bit farther than other ones.
probably. Yeah.
Right. Is there another question from our live audience? Oh, yay.
So, like, if you don't, like, for nuclear power, from what I thought during the presentation, why don't you just put a nuclear reactor, like a small nuclear reactor inside of a thruster for power? Wouldn't that be easier than anything else for, like, weight?
Can you repeat?
Would it be more efficient weight-wise and whatnot to use a nuclear reactor as a propulsion system?
Yeah, that is true. So I just showed a very brief picture of a fictional nuclear spacecraft, but it is true. Nuclear propulsion can change the game, but there are other hurdles when it comes to nuclear propulsion. There were some experiments probably in the Minerva in the 60s or late 50s, 1970s. There was another nuclear propulsion experiment, but it's there are other hurdles when it comes to nuclear propulsion. But yes, it can change the game. That's true. Good question.
All right. The next question is, realistically, when do you think that a complete trip to Mars and back could realistically happen? Like within 100 years, within 50 years, within 10?
So the mandate NASA has is in the 2030s, which is in the next 19 years, right? And I want to say that, you want to put your money on America, so don't bet against America.
All right. Oh, there's a lovely snarky comment about reusable things. This is the one time which they should never add in planned obsolescence. And I think I agree with that one. So does everyone else who's probably traveled. All right. Oh, there's the next question.
Hi there. There's been discussion about space elevators. I can imagine that it's just totally not feasible for the Earth having a space elevator above it. Some kind of a launch cable you could just elevate supplies and so on. But this pre-positioning, or whatever you say, pre-deployment, that's right.
Yeah.
If you could do the pre-deployment and then launch from the moon, or from moon to orbit, obviously, then would a space elevator be at all practical and useful for the moon?
Well, a space elevator, and there are other non or unorthodox ideas for circulation, some more feasible than the others. They are a little different from actualization to the extent I have seen. The other part of the question that you mentioned, going to moon and then launching from there, I see if you look at the velocity change, the delta V, going to moon and going to Mars from Earth, the delta V needed is not that different. We saw that it's only 15%. So just for the sake of launch efficiency, we don't need to use moon as a stopover. We can go directly to Mars, which is much more economical. Because when you're going to go to moon, you have to spend 85% of all the energy. Then you need to get off moon, and then go all the way to Mars. That's going to be much more fuel expensive. Yeah. But a space elevator could be feasible on the moon. First of all, we don't even have a working prototype even on Earth. So, but I mean, there are, we basically focused on propulsion, chemical propulsion, which has been the most reliable way to get off Earth or get into orbit. But, elevator, one can crawl up without propulsion. It's an idea. It's been there for a while. We haven't seen anything that is working. Until then, it is still more in speculation stage. It's just my personal opinion. I'm not an expert on that field. But yes, it's been there. It's not definitely written off. It is one of the ideas that people have been discussing out there. I'm not aware of any serious discussion within NASA on that idea. So I haven't seen anything, at least official, on that.
That's probably another question where it's like, hey, someone go work out the theoretical physics of this, and hopefully technology will catch up soon. Right. So this person has a question where you have sci-fi shows that show spacefaring ships and whatnot that have like a spinning ring habitat around like other bits. Could you use something like that to get centrifugal force to simulate gravity?
Yes. So you can use. You have to be careful with that, though. It has to be fairly large. You cannot spin things too fast, because then it's like in a merry-go-round and people start throwing up and all that.
Right ever?
There have been some experiments on that idea, and definitely one of the ways we can generate some artificial gravity is to have, quite long arm segments that are spinning not more than a few times a minute or something like that. You cannot, if you have to spin many times in a minute, it's probably going to do more harm than good. But yes, it is a idea worth pursuing for deep space missions.
All right. Is there another question from our? Oh, yay!
I had a comment for the gentleman in the front row. There actually is a space elevator. It was just opened last week at Disney World for the restaurant Space 220. But my real question is, on a rocket like the Saturn, how is liquid hydrogen kept liquid? Is it insulation, or like on the pad are they applying? What's the power to keep it liquid?
The propellant tank itself is highly insulated. I haven't looked at what material is being used, but it is basically insulation. Yeah.
And I believe part of that is also likely pressure, because of, at certain levels things
yes,
under pressure can become liquid or solid.
Right. It is very densely packed form of liquid, high density. But again, temperature is definitely a factor. You need to protect it from any kind of external heat source.
Right. And let's see, it looks like currently my last question online, and actually if anyone else in online chat has any questions, you should get them in shortly. Would someone who does well in, let's say, a submarine setting also do well in a space voyage setting? As we have submarines now, they're small cramped quarters. So you would imagine someone who would possibly do well in that setting possibly be a better candidate for online, or not online.
Yeah, possibly. NASA has a recruitment process and a very rigorous selection mechanism for astronauts. So if submariners get into that, we would know if they do better than others. Yeah, but submarine, definitely, people are very used to cramped spaces and spending long days in isolation in small groups. Yeah, it's possible.
All right. Is there another question from our audience here? Oh.
Other than the cool factor of going to Mars in 20 years, what are like the top 3 objectives of NASA? Like, why would we do that instead of just send robots?
I believe the question is, why send humans to Mars instead of just robots like we have been doing?
Good question. Why send people to Moon? There are a couple of comments I would like to make there. It's a very good question. Why should we do anything, right? So one way, so everything. We are human beings. By nature, we are explorative. We are curious. So exploration is what we do. Even if you look at a small baby or child, they explore. We, by nature, we explore. That's how we have thrived. We have survived, right? So that is one aspect of it. We want to understand more about what's out there. We also learn more about ourselves. Right, so all those aspects, that knowledge itself, that is very helpful. The second thing is just the technology itself. If you look at many of the technologies that we develop for space has got civilian applications, including a lot in medicines, like detection of diseases and all that. So when we see new problems, when we solve them, we take those solutions and apply in more terrestrial life, even life-saving applications, which we could never imagine before, right? And the third, more of a far, not a philosophical, but it's still realistic, within the realm of reality, is that we, as a species, is locked on Earth. In one sense, Earth is like a fish in a barrel. Life has gone extinct on this planet many, many times in history. For our species to survive, we need to be a multi-planet species. And the only place other than Earth that we know could at least theoretically support life is currently, and is Mars. So that is more of a distant kind of realm for us, but it is definitely for the survival of the species as a whole. We need to get out of Earth and learn how to survive in those environments. So it is, if we just send robots, that's not going to happen, right? So I mean, I'm pretty sure this is more of a personal question for a lot of people. So there may be other perspectives, but essentially, we are curious by nature, so we are driven by our curiosity. And even for our survival, long-term survival, we need to get out of this planet and learn to survive in other environments. It's not just survive, even thrive. That's just my personal view.
All right. Were there any more questions in our... Oh, I see one all the way in the back. Raise your hand again because I lost you.
What do you expect to happen in the next 50 years? That's it.
I believe the question was, what advancements do you expect to happen in the next 50 years?
Could you repeat the question again?
What advancements do you foresee happening for certain in the next 50 years?
No one has a crystal ball, but I would definitely like to see huge advancements in space science. If we are talking in general, even human health, longevity, overall prosperity of people on Earth, conquest of diseases, things like that. But space science itself, it's very hard to predict. I expect quantum leaps in our understanding of the universe. We don't even know the size of the universe. I think if we compare our knowledge of the universe to what our knowledge was about the Earth, we can probably compare it against our knowledge of Earth about 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, where most people thought the Earth was flat. It was 2,000 years ago someone actually measured the size of the Earth, and before that they had figured out Earth is round. We don't even know the shape of the universe yet. So I really hope someone actually discovers the shape of the universe and the size of the universe in the next 50 years. That would be truly fantastic.
Right. Any more questions? All right. So it looks like that will wrap up our presentation for tonight. I want to thank you all who came out here. I want to thank our online audience as well. Like I said, do check us out on our website, uacnj.org. We also have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are a nonprofit, and all your donations have helped keep us open and offering these free programs since the start of COVID and even before that. So we also have a couple things for that. We have the, like I said, check out our website. It has all of these listed, where it's like PayPal. We now have a Patreon. So like I said, go check those out. Go check out our website. Check out our Facebook. And have a good night, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.
you.